Good morning with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. It comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratory. First with the highlights. The People's National Congress reform is adding more conditions for power sharing. Authorities are looking at various aspects of safety in the use of electric cycles and scooters. And in the region, Trinidad and Tobago's opposition and government are at loggerheads over a likely increase in the price of gasoline. And you'll have your latest international news coming from the BBC. Do stay tuned.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
Now for the news in detail. Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, PNCR Aubrey Norton, has laid down additional conditions for shared governance. He, however, said he had no faith in Vice President Barra Jagdeo because he had a track record of backpedaling on decisions. In an address and interaction with a large number of party faithful in New York, Mr. Norton said that first he wants the People's Progressive Party civic-led administration to provide adequate funds to local councils in opposition strongholds such as Georgetown, Linden, and New Amsterdam. He also wants more cash to be budgeted for the PNCR's support base. The PNCR leader has already identified the need for a clean voters list as one of the conditions for discussing shared governance with the PPP. On the issue of its demand for a clean voters list, the PNCR is yet to meet with the Guyana Elections Commission, which has since embarked on a 3-month continuous registration process. A United States Agency for International Development USAID-funded assessment on democracy and governance has recommended the need for executive power sharing to manage Guyana's oil wealth. The assessment notes that the National Assembly does not provide the opportunity for kickstarting the process because of bitterness between the two major parties. Police Commissioner Nigel Hoppy says talks have started between the force and the Guyana Revenue Authority, GRA, on licensing electric cycles and scooters. He told the opening of the 2022 annual police conference that the police force and the GRA will be implementing rules to govern the use of such vehicles. Mr. Hoppy later told reporters that among the concerns is the usage of those vehicles by persons of all ages.
That is an ongoing discussion right now with GRA. The traffic chief is integrally involved because we've seen where persons using these bikes, there is no age limit, and that's one of the things that persons who are using it currently. So we're in discussion to ensure that those things are regularized.
The police commissioner also says that there are concerns that drivers of electric bikes and scooters are not wearing helmets.
Well, what I know is that for the 9cc motorcycles and beneath, you do not have to use an helmet. So we will have to have a further look at the legislation to ascertain whether there is need for any amendment.
He says the talks between the civilian law enforcement agency and the GRA are expected to yield whether the electric vehicles could be covered under the Motor Vehicles Act. President Irfanali is recommending that representatives of the judiciary and the Guyana Police Force discuss problems and find solutions and cost them. He was Thursday addressing the opening of the 2022 Annual Police Officers Conference.
There must be tremendous synergy between what the police force do, how the executive support that, and the judiciary. And I want to propose that we have a strategic session to see how, because the judiciary can also help us to identify areas of weaknesses. And we can also raise concerns. So unless we can come in a room and we can discuss issues, we can discuss the future direction of the different arms of government and the role and changes that is required, we will not be able to build an intricate model.
Among those present at the opening of the 2022 Annual Police Officers Conference were the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, Shalimar Haque, Chancellor of the Judiciary, Yonette Cummings, and Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire, Minister of Home Affairs Robeson Ben, as well as top officers of the police and defense forces. The President said such a closed-door strategy session should aim to find solutions.
I want to urge that we convene such a forum in which we can have a closed-door, open, frank discussion, not only discussion, strategy session on identifying cross-cutting issues, identifying common issues, and identifying solutions and costing those solutions and working together in bringing those solutions to the table. We must not be in a public debate sometimes on where weaknesses are. We must be able to be in a room and strategically work on those weaknesses, those challenges, and come up with solutions.
He said there is no need to hire consultants.
We have enough brain power, human capacity in this room alone to do this, and we must work towards doing this very, very quickly. We do not need consultancy to do this for us. We are working in the system. We have experience in the system. We understand the system. And more importantly, we know what is required to take the system forward. It is just a commitment from all of us now to do what is required.
Judges and magistrates continue to complain about the absence of police witnesses. Several months ago, the government had raised concerns about the decisions of the Chancellor of the Judiciary and Appellate Judge Don Gregory in a number of political cases. Accused persons on remand have for decades been complaining that they are on remand for years awaiting trials. The Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana, FITUG, says it is time that the government approves the proposed national minimum wage. That amount that has been proposed unanimously 2 months ago by the National Tri-Party Committee was $60,000 per month. But FITUG says since NTC Chairman Joseph Hamilton had said that proposed new minimum wage would have been taken to Cabinet, nothing else has been said. That umbrella trade union organization says that with the ongoing increase in prices, it is time to end the procrastination and approve the increase. The minimum wage was last increased in 2016. Now for the news in the region. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Amour Motley has disclosed that the interviewing process for about 200 additional Ghanaian nurses has been completed. She says the healthcare professionals will be taking up their assignments in Barbados in the future. She used the occasion of Ghana's 65th anniversary of independence celebrations at the Cape Coast Stadium to publicly thank Ghana for the 95 Ghanaian nurses who arrived on the island in July 2020. She says the Ghanaian nurses have been making a difference in Barbados' health sector. Trinidad and Tobago's opposition United National Congress, UNC, is condemning Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley for hinting that people may soon pay more for gasoline. Earlier this week, Dr. Rowley said the current high prices of oil on the world market would not insulate Trinidad and Tobago, as the country has been importing crude oil to refine it for export. Oil and gas prices have been fluctuating on the international market as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24. On Thursday, Brent and West Texas Intermediate crude oil were trading at $112 and $109 per barrel, respectively. The Prime Minister also hints that the government may subsidize some of the fuel price increases. But UNC Senator Damian Lyder claimed these statements by Rowley were evidence of the government seeking to wage war on the citizens. He was concerned that people could be paying double or more for gas. Lyder warned that any increase in gas prices could have a knock-on effect on other goods and services. And lastly, in the region, the director of the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, Dr. Carissa Etienne, is warning countries that it is too soon to lower their guards as the world observes the second anniversary of the coronavirus COVID-19 being characterized as a pandemic. She cautions that when places relax measures at the wrong moment, transmission spikes dangerously and more lives are lost. Etienne said public health measures are being lifted in many parts of the Americas, including the Caribbean. The Dominican-born Etienne urged countries to base decisions on risk assessments and health data and to tighten public health guidance if cases go up. She says COVID-19 is likely to be here to stay and the world must learn to live with the virus. Reflecting on the past 2 years of the pandemic, Etienne said that the Americas has been hit harder than any other region in the world, with more than 2.6 million lives lost, half of all global deaths. The PAHO director said, warning that the pandemic is still a threat today, with countries experiencing record numbers of new infections during the Omicron wave, and the Americas accounting for 63% of new global cases in the first 2 months of 2022 alone. And here now is your international news coming from the BBC.
I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Russian forces in Ukraine have begun attacking new targets in different areas of the country. They've struck 2 cities in the west. In central Ukraine, the city of Dnipro was hit for the first time. 3 Russian airstrikes damaged an apartment block and a kindergarten. Our correspondent in Dnipro, Sarah Rainsford, says people who'd escaped there will now have to flee once again.
This is a very important industrial city in Ukraine. It's full of factories. It includes a missile factory. It's a place that is heavily fortified already. It's been heavily fortified since the beginning of the war, but it has been considered as something of a kind of safe haven. It's a place we've seen many people fleeing to from other cities in the south and in the east and in the north of here, in this part of Ukraine, that have come under sustained Russian attack. So Dnipro was seen as safe, at least for a while, before they started a very long journey to the west of the country. But I think, for quite a few people, that might have changed with this direct hit on Dnipro. People may be considering getting out.
The Russian Ministry of Defence says that separatist forces of the self-declared Donetsk Republic have captured the town of Volnovarka, which lies between Donetsk and the besieged port city of Mariupol. There's no independent confirmation. Satellite images by an American company of a Russian military convoy near Kyiv appear to show that it has largely been redeployed to nearby areas. This potentially signals a renewed push towards the Ukrainian capital. James Waterhouse is there.
the thousands of armoured vehicles and soldiers there seem to have been redeployed to towns that flank Kiev on the outskirts. And crucially, they've taken artillery howitzers, large guns with them, suggesting that they might be able to soon mount a much larger offensive on Kiev, which has been long feared by authorities in the city.
One of Ukraine's biggest food producers, MHP, has said that if Russian forces make further advances, it could stop the planting of this year's wheat and grain seeds. The company warns of catastrophic consequences for Ukraine and global food supply chains. Simon Jack reports.
MHP grows wheat and grain on 2.5 million acres of Ukrainian arable land and rears nearly 500,000 tonnes of poultry. The firm's chairman, John Rich, has told the BBC that he's gone from running a company to supplying a humanitarian organisation. He said Russian forces currently occupied 15% of his company's land and that its ability to sow crops now for harvesting later this year was under threat. MHP has thousands of vans at its disposal, something that's made it an important part of delivering food to the army and providing humanitarian support to towns and villages that have become isolated following the invasion.
Simon Jack reporting. World News from the BBC. President Putin has backed proposals from his defence minister to get what he called volunteers from the Middle East to fight in Ukraine. Russia has been a key player in the Syrian civil war on the side of President Bashar al-Assad. Earlier this week, a senior US official at the Pentagon accused Russia of trying to recruit Syrians to fight in Ukraine. In other news, China's Prime Minister has warned the country is finding it much more difficult to maintain high growth. Li Keqiang, speaking after the annual parliamentary session, said the world was facing increasing uncertainties that would weigh on growth. Last week, Beijing announced its lowest GDP target in decades, a modest 5.5%. Another big Chinese city, Changchun, has imposed a strict COVID lockdown. The virus has spread again despite strict control measures. Here's our China correspondent, Stephen McDonnell.
9 million residents of Changchun have been told not to leave their homes. One person from each family will be allowed outside every 2 days to buy provisions. All but essential services have closed in the northeastern city. Public transport has stopped and mass testing is underway. Following fresh outbreaks of COVID, Chinese officials say that the virus has spread to 19 provinces or provincial-level cities. While other parts of the world have now adopted a policy of living with COVID, China has maintained a total elimination strategy, attempting to stamp out each outbreak as it comes.
2 years after COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, a study has found that the number of deaths it's caused may be far higher than previously thought. Health researchers say data on excess deaths suggests more than 18 million people have died because of coronavirus, 3 times higher than official records indicate. The highest rates were in lower-income countries in Latin America, Eastern Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa. BBC News.
And that there was your international news from the BBC.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, which results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
Here now is a recap of the highlights. The People's National Congress reform is adding more conditions for power sharing. Authorities are looking at various aspects of safety in the use of electric cycles and scooters. And in the region, Trinidad and Tobago's opposition and government are at loggerheads over a likely increase in the price of gasoline. And you had your latest international news coming from the BBC. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.